Welcome to the live drive with Michelle. Shortly, we will be bringing you The Office on today's episode of The Office Well, and we'll introduce our guest very, very soon. I'm very excited about that. But yes, the news earlier read was by Uye from the newsroom, and that was the business news. And we will continue with Talk Business until 5 p.m. At 5 o'clock, we'll bring you today's episode of Critical Thinking with Zil till 6 p.m., where the Wise Men of Comedy would take a whole hour, giving you a great time wherever you are, if you're in traffic, to make sure that, you have a very relaxed and safe and humorous time while driving home or wherever it is you're going to at that particular hour of the day. That will be until 7 p.m. where we'll bring you the world news at 7. At 7 o'clock, yes, that'll be the world news. And at 7:30, we'll have today's episode of the Car Love Show. If you love cars, automobiles, and you're a mechanic, or you're just a road user in Lagos, or maybe a pedestrian, you can actually listen to that show. It doesn't matter. The show is for everybody. So that will be from 7:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. today. After that, we have Africa Daily until 9 o'clock. That is a quick summary of what you can expect on the live drive. But what I will say is that you will have such a great time learning, because it's going to be very informative, educating, and interesting as well, and you're encouraged to join the conversation all the way. Now let's go on a very quick break. When we return, we'll start off with The Office. Don't go anywhere. It's Lagos Talks 91.3.
Slow internet is bad for business. So, if you want what's best, get the Adewale Smart Box Outdoor Unit for SMEs. Indeed.
I was asking a question.
Oh, sorry, couldn't hear you.
With the Adewale Smart Box Outdoor
Okay, I was asking, can I leave my video
Yes,
closed?
yeah, you can.
Toll free or send an email. Business at ng.adewale.com to get started. Adewale, the smartphone network.
We need to paint the whole house and also do some serious for the visitors we have in this season.
I know, right? Good thing it's coinciding with the Dulux Buy More Win Big promo. So that's where you can get your top quality Dulux paint and also save some money.
How? Get up to 80,000 naira worth of shopping vouchers instantly when you buy Dulux paint from any Dulux outlet near you. Offer is valid from now to the 31st of December 2022 and applies to all our standard Dulux range. Terms and conditions apply. Dulux, let's color.
Lagos, this is your final boarding call for AG Baby Airlines Flight 1822 LG.
Never experienced a concert like this before. AG Baby is coming home with Catch Me If You Can. Anna Kalingo, live in Lagos. Date Sunday 18th of December. Venue, Convention Center, Echo Hotel. Doors open 6 p.m. Show starts at 7 p.m. prompt. Buy your tickets now at AnnaKalingoLagos.com. Economy class, 25,000 naira. Business class, 50,000 naira. First class, 100,000 naira. For table bookings, call 0809 4444 409. For inquiries,
Adewale Production.
the conversation is what connects us.
Join the conversation via the phone lines 0809.
Join the conversation on the most relevant issues affecting the workplace, as well as the human resource patterns being positioned to solve them on The Office. Get notifications on available job listings and advice on how to apply from featured experts in the industry every Thursday from 4:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. Only on Lagos Talks 91.3.
All right, so we're ready.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome to today's episode of The Office on Lagos Talks 91.3. Today, we'll be having such an interesting time with our guest, who I will introduce shortly. But first of all, remember that this show is proudly brought to you by CIPM in partnership with Lagos Talks 91.3. That's the of Personnel Management of Nigeria and Lagos Talks 91.3. Now, today we'll be talking about statutory deductions, which are sometimes taxes and pension. right? And today, my guest, very, very special guest of mine, is someone who calls himself the management bricklayer. He has multiple certified and certified expertise and a thoroughbred finance and HR consultant with over 2 decades of experience in education, banking, telecommunication, manufacturing, fintech, oil and gas, and business advisory services. He has a PhD in theology. He's a writer of daily inspirational and HR capacity, building text, HR word of the day, which is delivered on work days across 19 countries globally. He loves knowledge impartation, of course, that's why he's here. He loves listening to rap and poetry music. He also loves Chelsea Football Club and Golden State Warriors basketball team and loves watching telenovelas. Very interesting personality we have today. My guest is Mr. Adewale Adesanya. Welcome to the office, sir. Good evening to you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you join us today on the office. And today we're talking about deductions. That's sometimes it could be taxes and pensions. Now, for the purpose of clarity, I'd like you to know that I would just want to find out what statutory deductions and what the purpose of it, right? And whose role it is to ensure the remittance of statutory deductions. Is it the finance department or the HR department? I just want us to be clear on that.
Okay, thank you so much for your question. Statutory deductions, from the name statutory, are required by law. It is the law that requires every organization to deduct this amount from the salaries of their workers. So the finance department and the HR department both has a role to play. So the preparer and the doer, or what I call the preparer and the payer or the actioneer of the statutory deductions, are both this department. So finance is to pay to the relevant authorities, while HR needs to prepare the schedule. HR has the expertise to prepare the schedule and prepare all the information, because statutory deductions are confidential. They are confidential information, and confidentiality is one of the hallmark of the HR department. So HR department fills in all the confidential information and pass it on to finance, and finance actions it and pays it to the relevant deduction receiving agency.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's very interesting. Now we know the difference. Now, what are some of the statutory deductions that must be made from an employee's salary in Nigeria? Like you said, it's backed by law. So I'm sure you understand some of these statutory deductions, because some people need to be clear, because some people, when they get a job, when they look at these deductions, it doesn't make any sense to them. They might actually feel they're being cheated and even get mad at the federal government or even the organization for taking all of these little money here and there. And I just want people to understand, of course, like you said, it is absolutely legal. But for those employees who are still confused or do not know what these deductions are for, could you put some clarity into it? Just kindly educate us on it.
Okay.
What are some of these?
Thank you very much for that question.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question. In Nigeria today, we have 3 statutory deductions. There are 3 of them as at this evening that must be deducted from the salaries of workers or employees, as you call them. Now, the number 1 is taxes. Taxes is paid to taxes. They're paid to the state's inland revenue service. So the state government, based on residence rule. So taxes are deducted from the salaries of employees. So the taxes is what we call pay as you earn. That's what is called pay as you earn. Payee. Okay. So that is the first deduction taken. The second one is pension. This is remitted to the relevant pension fund administrator of the employee, the one the employee wants. So it's remitted to the PFA. We call them the PFAs, pension fund administrators of the employee, the preferred PFA of the employee. That's the second one, pension. So pension is the second statutory deductions made. And lastly is the National Housing Fund. This is to provide low-cost houses to Nigerians. So the third one is, this is remitted to the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. And those are the three statutory deductions. And based on that, they have certain calculation, they have certain rates, let me call it rates, that is attached to each of these deductions. They have certain rates that are attached.
Okay, thank you very much for clearing that up. The National Housing Scheme is also very important, but we won't go there. But thanks for listing these ones out for us. At least we understand what they are. Now, for tax deductions, can you please educate us on how the deductions should be calculated? And what is the best practice? Because sometimes it's being handled by the employers, and the employees really do not have to worry about that. But some of them might still be curious as to how they come up with these percentage or calculations. How does it really work?
Okay, so I'll start with the major two. We are looking at taxes and pension. So let's start with the pension. According to the PENCOM Act, the Pension Commission Act 2014, the one we are currently using, the one we are currently ascribed to in Nigeria, it's a minimum of 18%. 18% must be deducted from the total emolument of employees. 18%, a minimum. It can be more than that, but what the law requires is at least 18% minimum. Now, this 18% there is a contribution of 10% coming from the employer, and there is a contribution of 8% that is taken away from the basic housing and transport of the employees. So 8% is taken from the employees, and 10% is taken, the employer contributes 10%, and they remit that to the preferred pension fund administrator of the employee. So the preferred pension fund administrator of the employee, this is remitted to such organization. So sometimes you've seen situations where the employee says, no, I want more than 8%. So it must go or higher, it must not come down. So it must be more than the 8% or 10% remission. But in total, 18% is remitted to the pension fund administrator. And that is for pension. And for tax, that's the pay as you earn. It has, according to the Finance Act 2021, it has a rate table, what I call a rate table. So the rate table is after they've applied the consolidated relief allowance, you apply it on the gross emolument of the employee. So that is the total gross salary. So you need to apply a consolidated relief allowance. After applying that consolidated relief allowance of 20% of that gross pay plus 1%, or the higher of 1% of the gross pay, or 200,000. After applying this consolidated relief allowance, what is left is now taxable to the employee. Now, the rates, like I mentioned, it has a rate table, and the rate table are 300,000 at 7%, the next 300,000 at 11%, the next 500,000 at 15%, the next 500,000 at 19%, the next 1.6 million at 21%, and lastly 2.4 million, 3.2 million at 24%. So 24% is the highest rate in the tax rate table. So this is applied on the taxable income, and this is deducted from the employee. This is deducted by the employee. It's a whole lot of calculation, a whole lot of mathematics involved.
It's a whole lot of work, and well, at least now we know what the finance team and the HR team have to go through. It's not easy doing all these calculations every single month. We're getting to understand some of the things that happen behind the scenes. So we do appreciate you for being here. Now let's quickly talk about this percentage. Are organizations allowed to modify this percentage of deductions per what suits them? If not, why?
No.
They're not allowed.
No, like I said, no. It is a statutory deduction. It's the law as it's handled and says, for example, pension, it's 18%. So the organization cannot come back and modify it to 10% or modify it to 12%. The law says take a deduction of 8% from the employee and a minimum of 10% from the employer. So the organization cannot just modify it because they are statutory. They are already written in the law books. So the only thing for pension is that it goes up. You can only modify it upward. You can't modify it downward. But for taxes, that one is not modifiable. It is those rates I was reeling out then, the 300,000, it is how it is. It cannot be modified. The only exceptions is that anybody earning the minimum wage, any employee earning the minimum wage is exempted from taxation. That is, if there's anybody earning 30,000 naira, that's is exempted. 30,000 naira times 12, which is 360,000 naira. The person is exempted completely from the pay as you earn. So, but it cannot be modified by organization because that is the reason why we call it statutory deductions.
All right.
It is highly penalized.
Now, for pension deductions, can you educate us on how it's calculated and what exactly is the best practice for that?
Okay, so for pension is calculated on the breakdown of the salaries. So there's a breakdown called basic housing and transport. So in the breakdown of the gross salary or in the salary breakdown, there is different components. So we have the basic salary, the housing and transport. So for pension takes cognizance of basic housing and transport. You have on the payroll of every organization, people have other things, utility, meal, communication, wardrobe allowance, different allowance. But what pension talks or looks at is just basic housing allowance and transport allowance, those three. So from those three, we now calculate 8% of it. That is on the employee side. So the employee, that's 8% of the addition of basic housing and transport. So that is deducted from the employee side. Now the employer will now contribute 10% of the addition of the basic housing and transport. So 10% of these three is now what they will now add to the 8% that has already been deducted from the employee. And this is remitted on or before the 10th day of the month to the preferred pension fund administrator of the employee.
All right, thank you. Now, what do you have to say to organizations that do not remit tax and pension already that has been deducted from employee salary? Because it does happen, especially with small organizations that, people who are looking for jobs, they just go there, they really do not ask much questions. They get this monies deducted, all right, but they are not paid into their pension. Sometimes they don't pay for months. Sometimes they don't even pay at all. You might end up leaving an organization and realizing that your pension was not paid for once. You never even had a pension account in the first place. Many organizations do this. What do you have to say about these type of organizations, and who really is checkmating these things? I mean, are there laws against it? Is the labor union aware of things like this happening? What is the structure around it to make sure that organizations do not default?
Well, this is a major problem in practice. We've seen this being done. The only thing I would do for my part is to appeal to this defaulting organization. See, in the act, there are certain penalties. There are certain penalties that are given, that are melted out to organizations that are defaulting actually. And that is one of the problems of statutory deduction. One of the issues we have is compliance. So there is no complying body that goes around this organization, and they do. So if there is any, they do it selectively, and the impact is not that much felt. We've seen instances where individuals in organization, they go to the zonal offices of PENCOM and to report the organization for not remitting, and those. So we've seen PENCOM write to those organizations. I've seen PENCOM write to those organizations to remind them. So, but that is really a big headache, and it's the only thing I can do is appeal to defaulting organizations to ensure that once something is being deducted, it's contractual. You have already agreed with the employee that I'm going to be deducting this social amount from your salary, and I'm going to be remitting it to the preferred pension fund administrator. So you find out that once that has been done, the agreement supposed to be finalized to the latter without anything. So we still have that's a major challenge we are finding in practice. So a whole lot of organizations some are deducting, but they are not remitting at all. A whole lot. And I want to also appeal to PENCOM to also come in. That is on the rate of pension. For the taxes, that one is easy because you need them. You need your tax certificate for other businesses that the organization want to do. So to default in that might be very rare, but for pension, we have that challenge. And I'm appealing to all regulatory organizations and bodies to ensure that all hands are on deck to see that this ugly trend is stopped going forward.
Right, that's very good. Thanks for using this opportunity to speak to these organizations. But what can employees do in a situation where their deductions are not being remitted? Can the employer be reported?
Yes, like I mentioned, the PENCOM offices are everywhere online. So you can reach out to them and say, please, can you help us send a reminder to our organization to remit our pension? Can you send a reminder? And they will take steps to do it.
All right. Now, before we let you go, let's ask this very important question that actually just came from one of our listeners. He wants to know about employers dedicating money for late coming. Deducting money. Wow, you're laughing. Not that funny. When money is involved, where does this money go?
I always have this proverb.
Is it allowed in the first place? Is it allowed? Is this a Nigerian thing? Does it happen in other multinational companies abroad? It's not like you deduct people's money for late coming.
I don't deduct people's money. I don't deduct people. The question, like bringing the question to a platform like this, really shows that the person really is worried, and we need to attack it. In the world of work today, it is productivity over punctuality. We still find organizations do such practices where deductions are made for work and for coming late, and where in a cosmopolitan Lagos where construction is everywhere, the fuel scarcity and commuting is a big task. Now getting back to the office and somebody is deducting your pay at the end of the month, and there's an adage that says your take home could not take you home. So it's a little strange for me. I will refer the organization back to the Labor Act that says there's a certain portion of the employee salary that must go with the employee. So every employee you cannot deduct more than 1/3. You cannot deduct more than 1/3 of the salary of the employee, irrespective of anything. So every of these deductions must not pass 1/3 of the employee. And I also want to appeal to organizations to also consider the plight of employees at these times, with the festivities coming, with a whole lot happening, the fuel scarcity is still waking up and seizing. So a whole lot are happening. So we should we should just mellow down on arbitral deductions that are not productive, that can demotivate the employee.
But is it legal?
It's not legal. It is at the discretion of that organization that are doing it.
But it's not legal. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Someone here is asking, is NSITF not statutory?
Yeah, so NSITF is statutory, but it is not what affects the employee salaries. It is, so we call it cost to company. It's the company that is bearing that cost, not the employee that is bearing that cost.
Okay. All right, thank you for sharing.
Not the company that is bearing that cost. It is the organization. So let me clarify. The organization has his own cost to bear on an employee without the one affecting the employee. The one affecting the employee that is taken from their salaries are pension and taxes. That affects the employee directly. There are others that will not affect the employee. Things like ITF, Industrial Training Fund, National Social Insurance Trust Fund, HMOs. You don't deduct it from employee salary. In fact, HMOs, what you call the NHIS, some of them are seen as perks to the organization. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Adewale Adesanya, the finance and HR consultant. Do you have any last words for us before you go? Any final words?
My final words is I'm appealing to all employers listening to this program, HR professionals, practitioners listening to this program, that it is very sacrosanct that pension deducted, taxes deducted are remitted on behalf of employees. They have beneficial, they are of benefits to the employees, and if we deduct and we don't remit to the relevant tax authorities, it could affect or jeopardize the chances of such employees in some other areas. So it's an appeal, and I believe my colleagues working in organizations that are deducting and not remitting can turn a new leaf, and things can go smoothly in such organization. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Adewale Adesanya. We do appreciate you. Remember, Lagos Talks is your home for everything that relates to the office. So we do hope to have you back again to share more insights and give us some new nuggets and knowledge as regards how to build a better career and a sustainable one at that, while growing organizations and empowering people. Again, thanks for joining us. Coming up next shortly is Critical Thinking. Stay with us.